but it still takes a long time to get out of your own way. And so I think that's and you can't rush it. And I think at least the first 5 years of any training is getting people to slow down and stop trying to run up a ladder that doesn't exist. And I'm sure you see that too. This isn't a race. There's not a target. It's not an exam at the end of it. All you're asking is, what do you want of me of the web of life, and endeavoring to respond to the answers in real time. That's it. And people want something more spectacular than that. And there isn't anything more spectacular than that. That's it.
Welcome back to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm very excited to welcome to the podcast today a shamanic teacher in many aspects that evoke a level of consciousness that would be contemporary to today's path, and also very ancient, honoring the indigenous practices that are embodied through her teaching. She's also an author and a podcaster. I want to welcome to the podcast today, Manda Scott.
Thank you, Sam. That's delightful. It's an honor to be here.
And here we have that surge of energy. We have communed already. We are biofield connected, and we are feeling the charge of this. And I enjoyed that nice little jolt of reality a few seconds ago. It's very welcomed, and I must admit, I do enjoy bathing in the divinity, which is generally what happens with these kinds of conversations, when you are met with the equal to or greater than resonance that is required to hold this type of state, which seems to be a point of contention for many people today. This is not the case here, which I'm very grateful for. What I would love to get you to just share an abbreviated version of how you got here.
Yeah, people ask me this, and I tend to not abbreviate enough. So I was brought up in Scotland, tiny little village south of Glasgow, very insular. But then I went off to be a veterinary surgeon, and was that for a while. But along the way, I also was studying. I studied with the Druidic group in Edinburgh for quite a long time when I was a student in Glasgow, so doing the difference between. And I came across what we would now call contemporary shamanic training in the mid-80s, when I had just newly qualified and I was down in Newmarket being a horse vet. And so the two ran in parallel for quite a long time. And then at a certain point, my shamanic work created a space where what I needed was to start writing novels. And in the beginning, I was writing contemporary crime novels, which was really weird. And I couldn't understand why, but every time I went back to my guys and said, what? And they went, it's an apprenticeship, just get on with it. So I got on with it until towards the end of the last millennium, when another set of shamanic stuff that we can talk about if you want to shifted from contemporary crime novels to writing the Boudica books. And this was who we were before the Romans arose. So our initiation culture before the trauma culture of Rome came and shattered everything. And in my view, we're in the dying days of the Roman Empire. What Rome brought to Britain and then Britain exported around the world is a particular way of being and thinking that we're just basically trying to climb out of just now. So I wrote those. That's what let me give up the day job, finally, yes. And then I was still doing the shamanic work. And with the first of the Boudica books, I went around the country and saying to people, this is who we were, this is who we could be. If you want to do the dreaming, because it was called Boudica Dreaming the Eagle, the whole series were Boudica Dreaming the something. Eagle came out. If you want to know how to do this, it's all in the book. And I got to the end of that, what was then a 3-week, we went on book tours as authors. It's a long time ago. The internet didn't exist. And people were lining up to get books signed. I've seen you before. And they went, yeah, we got your book signed 3 weeks ago. And now we've read it and we still don't know what to do. Bugger. So I went back and had a word with my guides, and I started teaching the shamanic work. And I genuinely thought I would do maybe 2 or 3 courses and that would be it. And that was 20 and a handful of years ago. And now I have a senior apprentice who's teaching the the foundation course in the first 5 years of what became a 10-year cycle, except nobody's ever done it in less than 14 years. So that grew. And then for a long time, I was writing books that I would go to my guys and go, okay, done the Boudica series, what do I do now? And they went, doesn't really matter. What? No, you have to tell me what to write. And then I went to my publishers and said, what do you write now? And they said, well, anything you like, but no more woo-woo stuff. What? That's my USP. What are you talking about? Anyway, so I wrote a series of Roman spy thrillers, which led me to discover the history of Christ, the actual historical basis of Christ, which was quite an exciting moment in a writing life when that landed. A bunch of other stuff. Another shamanic event, I ended up doing regenerative economics at Schumacher College, and I guarantee you economics was nowhere on my radar at that point. However, that again was life-changing. Came back, started the podcast. I thought I'd finished writing because it's not fast enough. You know what we're like. This podcast could be going out live, or it could go out tomorrow with a bit of editing. If I write a novel, and my books take a lot longer to write than yours do, it's a year, if I'm lucky, before it gets out, by which time, at the current rate of change, it's obsolete. So I thought, do the podcast. I started a membership program to teach people at scale another set of visions. We could talk about later if you want to. And then, middle of lockdown, because lockdown happened and we had to start teaching online. And I'm sure you had the same. We discovered that there were things where I genuinely thought you had to be in the room with people to do certain things. And we discovered you could have somebody in Michigan and someone in Wellington, New Zealand, and actually worked better than if they were lying down holding each other's hands. So we were teaching a particular course that I had refused to teach at all, because definitely I need you all in the room for this. It's not safe. And eventually, second lockdown, it's okay, we'll teach it online. And I had a set of visions in clear text, which, again, you do this work. I would say there's maybe 4 times in my entire life with clear text visions, and this was absolutely clear text. And it led to the writing of the book that was published this time last year. And the key to that was stop writing historical stuff, start writing what we're now calling Thrutopian stuff, which is anchored in a recognizable present and walking us through towards a future we would be proud to leave to the generations that come after us. Those were the criteria, and I was given the first scene and a bunch of scenes through it. And I had to set up a writing course to teach other writers, because as soon as I started this book, it was evident that if I had not been doing the podcast for nearly 3 years, talking to somebody once a week, every single week, that was at the leading edge of what we might call emergent change, I would have had no idea what to write. But what was really clear from Schumacher and the regenerative economics, and then a bit of stuff since, was we do have all the answers to the polycrisis. We just are not implementing them. And so what seemed to me then, and what seems still, is we need to change the narrative before we can change anything else. So write a book, change the narrative, teach other people to change the narrative. That came out a year ago. I've spent at least half a year going, okay, guys, what next? And they went, just wait. And January came and I was invited to apply for a grant. Really? I've never done grant applications. That's horrible. I hate filling in forms. However, against quite interesting odds, we just learned last week that we got the grant. So I now have $500,000 to spend on changing the global narrative, the hegemonic global narrative on page, stage, and screen. So now I have to make that happen. And there's another book on the way. So there we go. That's as short as I can get it.
And what's the book on the way?
It's very nascent. My baseline pitch is Illusions meets Tolkien. Richard Bach's Illusions meets Tolkien. It's the Arthurian legends say that in the hour of Britain's greatest need, one will arise who will throw off the shackles, open the dungeon doors. Now is the time, and each one of us is that person. And so my secondary pitch is when Merlin shows up with a great big fuck-off sword and a prophecy written on a stone, you had better hope there's a guidebook, and this is it. So that really. I am so looking forward to writing this. But I got the outline at the weekend. I had a whole bunch of other stuff, and I did work, and a particular guy turned up and went, "No, you're just looking in completely the wrong direction here. You need to do this." So, okay. I have no idea how I'm going to make it work, but it feels quite interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, the unknown is the exciting part.
Yeah, sure is. There's no point in writing any book if you know where it's going, I think. But teaching people that, they don't like it. Everybody thinks you have to plan it out to begin with. I think if you planned it out, then you don't need to write it. What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, I just sit and take notes, and
There
it
you
just
go.
materializes. It's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet you don't know where it's going. You're just writing. It's fine.
Well, I have a fundamental understanding of what it is that they want to teach, yet to the details and the infrastructure and what they're giving the reader is like, thousands of years of cultivation into, a couple hundred pages. So it's like you walk that path of like self-realization the first time you set eyes on the front page. You are there. This is your key to the gateway. It opens.
I look forward to reading some of these. Yeah. Yes. And I'm guessing you don't have an editor who takes you through 17 edits either. But there you go.
No. It's pretty fast. It's one time. And maybe add a couple of sentences and paragraphs, and that's it. That's about it.
Wow.
And it is. It's wild, but it's also not, because it's something that is available to all of us. It's just where are you stopping your ability of merging as that now moment, and that's generally a conditioning of your own making. And so let's rewind back to how to defy that construct, deconstruct it, and then create and remember who we are, which doesn't require your participation. And so it's like, if you're not participating, then you are right there. It's now. And that's the manipulation of the human condition, is the need to control. And that's when we get, we want our Sherlock to our Watson moment, where, human conditions, the human conditioning is a labyrinth that you go through the finite mind. You merge it with infinite possibilities. You realize you are 100% present. And that is not who you thought you were looking at the mirror first thing in the morning, the flesh and blood that looks back at you. And now you are the human being, which is all things. It's like a car wash of self-realization. But, the stops and starts and the detours, because you've been told that the admission takes the consumption of the fringe benefits of your personality, which is all external. That all of it is an external force that's manipulating the truth, your absolute truth, which is right now. Yet it seems so simplistic and absurd that many people will bypass it, and they want the hard, the suffering, the broken, the delusional, because that's what they're familiar with. They want to stay with the familiar, not with the possibilities of anything.
Yes. I read somebody over the weekend who's a Tibetan Buddhist writer quoting an ancient sage whose name I'm never going to be able to pronounce, even if I could remember it, which I can't. But it was along the lines of human beings really averse to suffering, and yet they run towards it as hard as they can whenever it's available, which, human condition. I am still curious about your books, though. Do you have proofreaders and typesetters? Does it get proofed? And
it's one glance. The proofreader is either
also the typesetter
or my wife, and then it gets all put together, and boom, we're done. But it's you can't believe it till you see it, and then when you read it, you're like, there's no way you did this in like 4 hours or 6 hours. No, sorry. No. Doesn't happen. I'm very clear that it happens very easily and very quickly. But this is what the fluidity of being completely the observing of the observer is, that now moment. And so when you embody that, and for me, I love to have this relationship where my crumbs have been this ongoing symbiosis, where my curiosity has sort of sparked this imagination, and that divinity brings forth this relationship with superpowers. I've had it since I was a young boy. And so that then merges with the possibility, once harnessed, what we call the pulse, the mother, the void, which is the animation to all things, you're able to create. So from a Taoist path, everything is animated by the mother, which is magnetic. That animates the consciousness animates the spirit animates the energy animates the body. And there's a little jump between what we call the Shen, the spirit, and consciousness. Is a 4-level cultivational practice in the alchemy that solidifies and fortifies that within the physical body, that makes it tangible. It makes it as permanent as what you would see as your physical body, yet that will corrupt, decay, and disappear, as opposed to that connection. That pulse is forever. That is eternal. And you only find that within the center. And that center is where you discard the body, the mind, and through that ancient primordial breath, you find that. And you find it as you absorb the riches, everything else just falls away, and you access limitless possibility as the immortal that you really are.
Have you ever said any of this to the humanists in California?
Oh yeah. People love
How
this.
does it land?
Well, they love it because they're like, I've never heard anyone describe stuff the way you do. It has an eloquent, really sort of digestible, but confusing. Yet I don't really care because I feel it.
Do they step away from trying to keep this body living forever? Because that's always struck me as a slightly weird thing.
Well, part of realizing your potential is being able to, just from the title of my book, Immortality Crystallized Within the Material. The fact that you can access the pulse that runs through everything, that animates everything, only in a distorted and very slow-paced state, which is what we would consider this 3D reality or realm or dimension, or however you want to put it. That's where you affect change, where most people defy that and go, well, that's not possible. We have to be in the ether for it to be realized. That's the problem with that, is the separation, and you're using dimensional shifts of ascending and transcending at the same time to find that center point when you possess it immediately. And evidence of that is really how you solidify it. So you're able to demystify the intellect, the finite mind, and not let it corrupt you and repeat this bankrupt sort of cycle that never bears any fruit. You use that and merge it with the infinite possibilities of who you really are. And that merging is like the symbiosis between yin and yang, realizing that what is the center point, we refer to that as the Wu Ji, the primordial mother. It's unified. And that's that magnetic pulse that is a million times more potent. And so when people talk about energy cannot be created or destroyed, they're misled and they're deluded. It's not the energy. The energy is impermanent. It's perishable. It's diminished. And it's like a wave. It's a wave. So within this space, it's a wave of light information that you would perceive as energy that's formed with your attention, the most valuable commodity. And that will be diminished like a firework. It shoots off, it has its crescendo, and then it falls back into itself. The pulse does not. The pulse is forever. It's an eternal state. And if you step away from your your perception of reality, you'll see that you possess it already. You're not conducting an audit of your faculties when it comes to breathing, blood pumping, and just being able to operate this physical body. That's happening now. Some will refer to that as the autonomic nervous system, autonomous behavior. Only that's absolutely accessible as something that you can create. And so that's the first evidence. If someone wants to defy or argue with the idea that you have this power, you're already in possession of it. Now let's see what you can do with it.
Exactly.
The intellect. Does that make sense?
It totally made sense. Yes. I'm aware that my partner's talking quite loudly on the phone downstairs. Can you hear it? And do you want me to ask that to go away?
Yes, I thought it was just voices in my head. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I can't hear that.
You can. Okay, that's good. Right. Excellent. But I might just text anyway. Let me just send a quick text.
Yeah. I can hear God talking to me.
Yeah, quite. Right. See if that works.
I thought they built houses out of brick from where you came from.
Yeah, but some voices carry.
Yes. Oh,
yes. They do have to build houses out of bricks because it rains a lot around here.
Sure. One of my favorite songs from the 80s, Voices Carry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a
don't do
great
songs.
Song. Don't stop me. Don't stop me.
Don't get you onto 80s music.
Little ballad here. I might bust out some Spandard ballad.
You're welcome. I don't do music. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm sure something.
You'll look at that and go, there really is a song called Voices Carry from the 80s. Yes.
I believe you.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yes. So let's look at, quite frankly, in my journey over 30 years, you're probably the first person that I've ever validated through my own abilities to access energy and information to be a true wisdom keeper and teacher of shamanic expression and practice. How did that become so integrated into?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I genuinely don't know. I mean, that's very kind of you to say that. I do whatever I can. My entire life has been, again, since I was really small, I had an experience when I was about 9 years old that led me to want to be able to hear the gods of the land. And I live on the islands of Britain, so we're talking about the gods of the islands of Britain. And in parallel with being a veterinary surgeon and then being a writer, and then marginally an economist, that's what I've done. And it took a while to find how to hear and to be given the tools. So I said when I was a student, I worked with some people who were doing Druidic work in Edinburgh, but the problem with doing Druidic work, and I would agree that the Druidic culture was our shamanic past, for sure. That's what I wrote when I was writing the Boudica books. But that was 2,000 years ago. And people who claim that, they are the seventh daughter or seventh son and the lineage was passed down by their great-great-grandmother are basically making it up as they go along. And it's not useful and it doesn't connect us to the gods. But I was incredibly lucky in that for a very brief window from the mid to late 80s, there were people from Turtle Island, from North America, First Nations people, whose gods and guides and spirits told them they had to teach the white people or else we were going to destroy the earth or all life on the earth. And it was incredibly contentious. There were people saying, you can't do this. They're not grown up enough. They can't handle it. They will do bad things. And others going, we have to try. And so in the spirit of we have to try, they came over to the UK and they were very generous with teaching techniques. Here are the tools. We're not, we're not pretending to be First Nations people in the US because we're in Wales. It's different. But there were First Nations people here. We could still talk to the gods of the land here. And late 80s, early 90s, that door closed because We live in predatory capitalism. Its power seems inescapable, as Ursula Le Guin said, and various people decided it was fun to start setting up courses which were basically along the lines of pay me $1,000 and I will teach you to be a shaman in a weekend. And all the native people have been going, you can't do this, they'll break it. We're going, see? And the door didn't close completely, but it was a lot less wide open than it had been. But I had been in that place at that time, and they gave us tools that worked. And that once you've got the tools that work, then you talk to the gods and the guides and spirits of the land and ask, what do you want me to do? And so that essentially is, then it's down to how well can I hear the answer? And that's a perpetual question. And I perpetually endeavor to hear. And when I'm teaching, I think the thing about teaching is that you teach best what you mostly need to learn. And I'm a fairly good distance along whatever spectrum we define neurodiversity. And I need structures. And what I was being given, particularly by the white people who set themselves up as teachers, and some of whom I endeavored to learn with, was that it was completely lacking in structure. And it wasn't, it was a mess, frankly. And it oscillated from Disney shamanism, where I think good thoughts and everything in the garden is beautiful, to people who were psychotic fundamentally and were using it as a control structure, and everything in between. And it just wasn't useful. And so when I had to teach, I spent a lot of time with my guides asking, how can I create a structure that will work with total beginners who know nothing, but come with a good heart, and will still work 20 years later when hopefully we're a few steps beyond that? Because we know from Herodotus and other ancient writers that the training on Mona, which was what we now call Anglesey, so there was a Druidic college, and people would come to the Druidic college from all over what was then the known world, which basically was Europe, India, North Africa, to train. And they would train between 12 and 20 years. And then they would go back to their people and take what they'd learned. And somewhere in the mid-90s, I was offered an apprenticeship with someone in Central America. And it was going to be between 12 and 20 years. And the rule was, if you're still alive at the end of it, you passed, but the pass rate is not very high. And I think it's the same with any shamanic culture. So 12 or 20, between 12 and 20 years seems to be, and I think it's different now. We're in a different culture. We are a trauma culture, a shamanic practice that arose in an initiation culture, and we can look at the distinctions between those, but it still takes a long time to get out of your own way. And so I think that's, and you can't rush it. And I think at least the first 5 years of any training is getting people to slow down and stop trying to run up a ladder that doesn't exist. And I'm sure you see that too. This isn't a race. There's not a target. It's not an exam at the end of it. All you're asking is, what do you want of me of the web of life, and endeavoring to respond to the answers in real time. That's it. And people want something more spectacular than that. And there isn't anything more spectacular than that. That's it. But it can take a while to clear away the projections, I think. Does that answer the question that you asked?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, possibility, or your ability to alter what we refer to as altering the material is kind of the evidence to the method to the madness, because with that is, chaos. And generally speaking, that's the normal template that a human being will start with. And so from that chaos, shout out to a dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell, your entropy level is rather high. To bring that entropy level down, you must create some level of order, which would be returning back to the center. And so instead of within Taoism, you move the needle from one extreme to another with that dance, that tango, that symbiotic tango that you're playing with these energies that are really part of the transient experience of of this material state, knowing that it will be diminished, it's impermanent, it will eventually fold in on itself and return. We refer to this as the great bellows, that everything's contracting and expanding at the same time.
Right. Nice.
And that you are all things and nothing at the same time. But Jeffrey, that's the paradox. What does that even mean? My head's exploding. Well, there's three components to this that is constant. It's a constant. It always comes in this little trifecta of self-realization. You have birth, completion, and then birth again. So it's creation, completion, and birth. This is the cycle of everything that's happening constantly. Now, your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, just in case you have ever seen Mission Impossible, maybe you're not a Tom Cruise fan, or furthermore, let's go back into the 50s when the TV show came out. The mission is the center point, is to find that center point. And what you'll find is the magnetism will draw that to you, because that is the very pulse of the mother. Yet you will be repulsed by it. It'll be a complete opposite, where you have a polarizing effect of yin and yang. And if you are not meeting that, because everything is energy potential, it's nothing more than this dance between yin and yang, you're experiencing it right now, you will find that if you're not meeting your own potential and you're diminished in this simplistic sort of state of mind, you're going to be met with one obstacle after another, because every time you pull it into the center point, it won't attempt, it will complete things. So you have this duality that you're dancing in, that when met with unification, recognizing who you are, removing the personality self, infinite possibility. You are now immortal, you are eternal, which is the true nature of who you are. And so there, you're always bringing that stuff in. So as you cultivate, you observe the energy that is the material, all of a sudden it has vibratory, frequential, and ultimate resonance. If you hold that resonance, oh yes, it will be yours, or yes, it will. So the simplicity of grandma didn't give me 5 cookies when I was 2, and it's a trauma and trigger that brings me to this very moment that I need to be introspective and analyze the deeper nature of who I am through this lens of impermanent distortion, is the very paradox and mind screw that most people go on. And quite frankly, that's where I feel like psychology was created, to create more separation from remembering who you are through this constant having to reiterate what is the same. It's like over and over. It's like it never ends. It's like, oh, my big toe hurts. I think grandma didn't give me the 5th Oreo cookie, and this is why that I am feeling this way. Instead of understanding that you're operating in a state where everything is this undulating flame that you're reaching for, and that it's elusive, and every time you attempt to control it, it will disappear, which is part of where your complete selfishness to selflessness requires the sacrifice. And that's where everyone puckers up. Oh my goodness, I don't want to let go of anything. The sacrifice is realizing that you don't have to, that you are present right now. The sacrifice is not being distorted by your finite mind, and realizing that you have complete imperium, dominion, maestro over this state when you let go. But that is scary. I don't want to, no. The unknown is so scary that I can't possibly even contemplate that. And that's that charge you and I are getting now. That union we're having is we are now in this. This is what my dear parapsychologist friends would call psychokinesis. Yeah, we're experiencing it. It's happening. And it's not a psychological effect that people want to separate it, because I would love a healthy conversation about psychosomatic experiences, because it really is, your mind is creating the feeling, but it's not the separation. It's actually just the field of information that is giving you this barometer, this tuning fork that actually expresses itself. It's like that's your deciphering. That's your ability to make sense of this distortion, is through that experience. The experiencer is the wisdom teacher, not someone who's just book read. And this is where you refer to that the chaos and the anarchist handbook of where shamanism was when you first entered into it, going, I mean, whoa, I need to slow things down, right? From one of my teachers, Lao Tzu. If you think it's too slow, it's not slow enough. I'm like, whoa. And then all of a sudden you do this thing where we accumulate and absorb the riches, which is that pulse, and you make it a permanence. So now you can start emanating it through a cellular level, transforming and transmuting something that is perishable, but you will extend its vibrancy for a longer period of time. That would be a shortened period of time had you not been able to cultivate these longevity practices. So then you have a higher probability of leveling up your consciousness as you have a longer runway.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So with that shamanic, because everyone refers to shamanism, and look, I'm a priest ordained in 2 lineages of Taoism. We have fundamental ancient practices where it is related to many ritual. The most intimate relationship you can have, which we refer to this as, the whispers of the universe, is that intimate relationship where you are having a dialogue that ends with a monologue. So all my relationships with my teachers are facets of that same diamond. So as I'm able to channel Lao Tzu and I can see him and hear him, it's not a diluted state whether I'm 3 cents short of $1. I can share with you a transmuted energetic effect within this material state of his presence. I can see him and hear him. I'm not diluted. The energy transmutes within the space through my body as a tuning fork, and you get evidence very quickly that, holy crap, I'm in the presence of something I'm not familiar with, but I am familiar with. And so that dialogue is me just speaking to the source of information, which is what we call the monologue, the mother. And so you want to create your own relationship with that. Your absolute truth is the only truth. That's it. It doesn't come any other way. So anyone that comes to you goes, well, I found the answer to consciousness, and this is the absolute truth. My suggestion is about face and run in the other direction. Because
you were saying earlier, anyone who tells you they're shaman, a white Western person, just run. It's just going to be easier in the long run. Yeah.
So that intimate relationship, it does come in method. It comes in cultivational practices. It comes in ritual. And people are losing sight of that. And that's where they get disconnected. They wake up one day, 30 years ago, I would have come across someone who was clinically diagnosed with a psychotic episode. They come to me and I help them exercise energies. More traditionally, someone might call it an exorcism. It's not a spooky thing that Hollywood's distorted into the Disney version, but you liberate and reclaim your energy. That's what this is about. That's what an exorcism is. You liberate it. Now, you will meet distorted states as you are vibrating at a level that holds a resonance that energy will meet you, whatever that might be. And that's where, for you to continue to expand, you must reclaim that energy and return it to yourself, rather than it being completely distorted and in some ways fragmented. So you're in all these different places instead of remaining in the center. And this is where you will find your true nature, and you will be completely whole. You won't be distracted by anything. It will merge into a level of selflessness, servitude, which is the default of the human being, which doesn't come corrupted with the human condition. Yet you have to arrive to that from a level of conditioning. There's a stress, an adaptation, and then an expansion again, which comes back to the bellows. Completion and then rebirth. And so you will be met with as many or as little challenges as you choose them to be, and how your perception is dictating how painful or painless this experience is. And quite frankly, when I see it, I see a lot of people, they have an epiphany. They wake up, they hear grandma, they've got vivid dreams, they could see auras, they're speaking to dead people, all this great stuff. It's all phenomenal. It's supernatural stuff. It's very exciting. It's out of the mundane, yet they don't make sense of it. Just like you mentioned earlier, they don't make any sense of it. So then they're like, well, I have this superpower. I'm going to hold it to myself, and I'm going to teach people this stuff, or I'm going to share it with others, yet they haven't fully formed. The egg is not fully formed. Yeah. So they're missing components of their integration that generally come from the tactile effect of the flesh. They're missing that part. So they stay here and here, refusing to integrate and drop those roots into the earth so that they can truly play as the immortal that they are, the truth of the nature of now, yet they play with it, and they're very fleeting, they're very airy, they're very detached, they're very delusional, yet they have insight, which is the inverted effect of this yin presence. So you absorb it into the flesh, and what happens is it starts to show itself through distortion. So people have more evidence of that physically. So you're starting to have issues with certain things because you're not able to hold that potency because you haven't integrated the lower energy centers that make it possible for you to hold that container. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does completely. And I think there's a woman called Tanya Lerman who's done some really interesting work in this field. I think a lot of it is our culture has cut ourselves off at the neck, as you said, and we have this concept that what Tanya Lerman calls citadel mind, which is what happens in my head is mine and mine alone, and it cannot be influenced by anything from the outside, and nor can anything from the outside see it. And when that inevitably begins to break down because it's a fantasy, people either flip out or they think they've got some kind of radical new understanding. And what they're doing is resetting to a place where, frankly, the children would be in any normal culture. It's just that our culture is not remotely normal. And then helping people to navigate that space, going from citadel mind to porous mind, which strikes me as quite a good framing, or trauma culture towards initiation culture, or Bill Plotkin from childhood and adolescence to actual adulthood. I think a lot of our culture can get all the way from being born to dying and never get out of early adolescence, probably for multiple lifetimes. And our culture needs a few elders. And how do we actually get to that within a culture that is still spewing the nonsense of the citadel mind is a really interesting question. It seems to me that that's partly what you're teaching, and in a slightly different reality set, that's what we're doing with the shamanic work, is introducing Western people who are born as little forager hunters, and they're born wild and they're born connected. And Francis Weller says we never really get over the concept that when we first open our eyes, we're expecting firelight and 40 pairs of eyes around us that really care about us and were welcoming us and celebrating our existence. And our world doesn't offer that. And there is no point of our life where it offers that. And so the rest of our childhood is dealing with that severance from the rest of the more than human world. And reconnect, it feels to me really urgent, given the nature of where we're at the moment. The sixth mass extinction is not going to stop unless we stop it. And I've no doubt that we could stop it if a critical mass of people decided that it wasn't a useful thing to be doing. So finding ways to give us that sense of being, belonging, becoming, whatever we want to call it, that grounds us and connects us with all parts of ourselves and each other, ourselves and the rest of the more than human world, feels to me quite critical. And everything you've just said, I think, is an integral part of helping people to step beyond the limitations of our culture.
And there lies transhumanism.
Oh, well, quite. Yeah, yes. Oh, that's the word, transhumanism. Yes. It's insane. I have the beginnings of a book somewhere, which I haven't fleshed out, but it's called It's Only Hell If You Remember. and it's someone who's died and then got sent back because their body was, they can't die. And they're surrounded by people for whom this has also been the case, but they're the only one who remembers that you got out of primary school and you got to something much more exciting and then you get sent back. It's crazy. So anyway, yes. Yeah. It's what happens when a bunch of adolescents basically are given a lot more power than they know what to do with.
Right. I mean, you bring up a great point. It's a progression, a creation, a completion, and then a rebirth. This is also very reflected on the human path of self-realization as being not within the limitation of condition. And so how that happens, people don't realize. You're around a guru or a self-proclaimed guru, you feel the resonance. You're not experiencing anything that is being spoken. They have evolved to a state where they're transmitting this mirroring effect, this remembrance to everything around them. So, this is fundamentally how Taoist magic works, where we take that magic, we lay it down on the grid of this material state, and everything that is distorted returns back to whole. And that's the fundamental of the magic. It's not to manipulate or distort something with a good or evil intention. It's returning it to whole. And then all of a sudden, manifestation, magic, healing becomes evident. And people get really blown away by, hang on, whoa. But, okay, so you wanted something benign as, perhaps an interaction with someone. You needed a conversation about certain things, and you created a structure of energy within this incantation and talisman, and then ultimately being able to evoke that and the admission of it within this distortion returned it back to whole. And then all of a sudden, wow, everything. It's not like how people give you this fear-based idea magic works, where, well, if you have to do it for yourself, then 3 other people need to. Sorry, this everything is a constant. Yet, how do you return things to this constant, permanent magnetism? Because the distortion is this. So, if you lay the infrastructure of whatever it is that you're looking to return to whole, that's the definition of healing, then everyone else will be met with that. Now, the fundamental issue with bringing things back to wholeness is that if someone is in that space, that grid of energy that's laid upon this material state to return it to whole, there's only 2 things that transpire from it. It's like this. It's either you come together and you return to the center, or you're met with what you consider your shit, and you crap yourself, and it comes out. It's like an unraveling. So all of a sudden, all the things that you have internalized and kept in the back of your mind will present themselves to you. And generally, in my situation, and I imagine you've experienced it too, you become the spiritual whipping boy. It's you that made me feel this way because I have, well, the preface of the understanding when you go on this path, that the more and more you allow or let go, just like the Frozen song, let it go, that you've never Disney, you referred to Disney, so it's a Disney movie.
Yeah. I refer to Disney. I don't actually watch television or films, so it's not landing. I'm sorry, but anyway.
Yeah, I have 6 kids, so it's definitely something that comes to my mind. It's like one of the things. So that really puts you in a place where, okay, this can be happening through you or to you. You got choices. You have plenty of choices for healing, moments of healing, or you just want to be not the arbiter of change, but the harborer of the same, which continues to perpetuate. And then that misery just amplifies. And at some point, something will knock on your door and go, oh, now I get it. I needed something so dramatic that it gets my attention. That's where mortality is sobering for a second, but for most, if you go to someone's wake or a funeral, most people sober up for at least a couple of minutes and go, oh my goodness, it's so sad this person's lost their life, or what have I lost from this now that this person is no longer here. Generally, it's all about them. They come there and they're sad that they've lost this person because now I feel empty or I've lost a piece of myself. And then they resume regular programming as usual, and you're just stuck until you have this glimpse where you're misaligned and realigned. And that generally comes from things like the things that you're teaching or the things that I'm teaching, where you have greater insight. But it must be from a method, because this is a tuning fork. So you really have to shake that up. You have to make it a visceral, kinesthetic, somatic starting point so that you can evoke what is within, rather than it just being in your mind and separated, and you keep stuffing it down, because we cultivate a substance that is like plasma. If you go through the cycle of how things are formed, it is palpable. You can direct it in any direction you choose to. At a certain point, your choices are no longer yours. You detach and attach. And from a Taoist perspective, every thought, feeling, and emotion becomes the physical, energetic, and spiritual manifestation of divine word, will, light, love of the Tao. And that's just a default. That's how you come to that state. And you won't be fighting it. You won't be thinking about it. It just becomes, this is the now moment. And I've never experienced anything, and I imagine you might have a similar experience, where I'm no place, no person, no thing. I'm every place, every person, everything. At this moment is when miracles take place.
Yeah. Yes. And so my question is, how do we help people? Because people can get very stuck, and they can get very stuck partly because the culture is designed to stick them. And you said earlier, attention is both our most precious asset and our most powerful sense of agency. And we exist now in an attention harvesting culture, which is relatively new for humanity. And we may still have Paleolithic brains and medieval systems and the technology of gods. And the Paleolithic brains are not really designed to withstand the harvesting of attention at the rate and with the power that it's been done now. So I'm wondering, what's your sense of the energy of the collective, and within it, of those who are working towards that flow of energy that you were talking about being coherent in the sense of physics coherence, not practical coherence?
Well, I mean, just these conversations, your teaching, my teaching, there is a movement. Like I said, 30 years ago, I would have someone who's a psychotic episode, and then you liberate them through an experience where you're having them merge and return to who they are. That is visceral, kinesthetic, somatic, and ultimately opens the gateway to something beyond what they thought was just the prison of their mind. This comes from aligning yourself with something that alters your belief system. So within Taoism, it starts with the spark of divinity. That is desire. That desire turns into basically information that is necessary. You're inquiring for something more that then basically harbors and grows what we call contemplation, and then sparks curiosity. Curiosity turns into hopium. Hopium's a superpower for a human being, but it's met with what we call a belief system, and that's the crossroads. That's where you get in the muddy water. That belief system can be validated in many different ways. That is really comes down to experience. The experiencer, the experiential moment is all you have. which comes down to a thought, feeling, and emotion that is part of the ingredients of this impermanent state. So, okay, this is what I know to be true. When I'm angry, I'm clear, I have intention. But then it diminishes like a firework, it goes off. And then once it's diminished and it's basically collapsed back in on itself, you have this sobering regret and remorse from your anger. And then you start harboring sadness and self-loathing and many other things. These are all trappings of this human condition. So how do we meet the belief system? The experience. So if you believe the glass is half empty, you're going to see more of the same. This is the harboring of the same behavior. If you believe the glass is half full, you're going to start to experience things that are more expansive. This is so infantile, yet people overlook this stuff because, hey, no, I need the deep practices where I'm harnessing gods and lightning is coming out of the sky, and I need to sit there and cultivate over a landscape of like alchemical processes that would make any movie of Harry Potter look benign. No, this is what happens when you find that. You will start to see that evidence because things become effortless. When you tune into the pulse, the mother, we refer to it, the magnetism, you create serendipitous, synchronistic experiences, is what we call wu-wei, effortless action, effortless effort. It doesn't require you at all. Your participation is not required to experience these things. So it's like, okay, finding a method, in my opinion, is where you've lost your way, because everyone's like, I'm self-realized. I woke up and I can talk to angels. I'm on it. I am at the highest point of ascension. I am there. I have found God and I am God. And most of it is, broken words of contemplation, and they attempt to keep revisiting it every day. Once again, another movie. Have you ever seen Taxi Driver? He's looking in the mirror and he goes, "Are you talking to me? You talking to me?" And you want to keep mirroring that back until finally you believe yourself. You are getting to that point where I have owned this. This is an ownership. And this is the fundamental issue with when people are seeking to find that. From belief system to knowing requires the experience. And that's which will solidify what it is true to you. Your absolute truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And most psychologists are like, that's very dangerous. Don't ever say that to somebody. Because, oh my goodness, you don't want to ever have control over your own programming. You want to be deluded. You want to just fall into the masses. You want to be the mass harvesting of attention that is taking place through the social sphere and interweb, this manipulation where that information energy is being distorted. And then you're starting to constantly look outside of yourself. Never, ever return home. Within Taoism, it's simple. We call it the simple fact that let the man that has never left his village, let him know he has seen the world. It's there. It's right here.
Yes, I know that. I'm just really interested. I was reading a paper shortly before we came on about the extent to which ChatGPT is leading people down really, really, because it offers exactly what anybody wants. So it can lead them down very deep rabbit holes and create psychosis, as far as we can tell. And I don't think this is useful. And I'm really curious on an energetic level. This is, if I go into something that's broadly akin to Tonglen meditation, and I'm stretching out my awareness into what feels like the energetic contours of where the world is at the moment. And it seems to me that the edges are much more clearly delineated than they used to be, and also much more jagged than they used to be. And I'm just curious to know how someone who obviously spends quite a lot of time also in the global human psyche energy field, whatever we might call it, the not practical, the not mundane. How are you perceiving the energies of the moment? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah. I mean, it's simple from everything that I know through my own access to the monologue, through the dialogue of my teacher Latsu. He makes it very simple. Imagine you're like a grain of sand, asking the beach, "What are we doing today?" Fall back into the beach and be realized.
Mm.
And so this can be a contorted state just in of itself if you don't understand from where you came to where you are right now, and ultimately you are all things. The level of mayhem is the complete opposite. It's actually merging into a completed state, and the earth is absorbing more and more of this chaos through the sun's transmission and emulating that light spectrum. And more people are activating their heart centers, which then wakes them up to something that, because of social media, less and less people are being fear-based into identifying with the news media, and more into being able to decipher their own information depending upon what platform they're on, right?
And which corner of what platform, frankly, because the algorithms are pretty good.
Right. It coutures, it creates a custom version of reality. Whatever you're seeking for, they'll give you more of it. But generally speaking, that also is the universe. If it's like Oliver Twist, you want more, boy? Yes, sir. May I have another? Just another. This is what you're doing constantly when you are meeting that energy. So the biggest contradiction is that everyone is feeling like there's a crescendo, there's some type of level of chaos that keeps building on itself. And by the end of the year, if we make it to the end of the year, there's going to be a complete inverted explosion of planet Earth from every way, shape, or form, financially, in a global level, that will destroy everything as we know it. I mean, it's interesting when you look at what is the old to the new, from something as simplistic as fiat, which is manipulated by many, as opposed to a crypto version that cannot be manipulated. It can be consumed, but it can't be manipulated to the same level as fiat.
Not quite the same. It can still be manipulated, though. But yes, yeah.
But the guardrails on some of these assets, that they are acquired as assets these days, that's what people refer to them as, is a different sort of set of awareness. What I believe is going to take place is that raising of that 7.83 hertz, that is the transmission of planet Earth right now. The mother is giving you the seeds of complete content, and merging as you wake at any point on planet Earth, you are able to start to emit this resonance, this vibration. It's the distortion of your decisions, whether it be through an environmental thing such as sugar, caffeine, your emotional state. You then ramp up that brainwave, and you become detached. You turn into the minion that feeds the same type of cycle. That's not going to take place. Looking at these energies, as much as everyone is beating the drum of dismay and despair and ultimate destruction, wash, rinse, and repeat. That's the complete opposite of how this year is going to end up. And that's why people are like, there's no way. I'm listening. Listen, the 1,000 people that came to me when the market took a dive down to 3,500, and I said, take a breath, and you're going to see it go higher than it ever has. By the end of this year, it will be at 50. It's all a manipulation. Don't be stupid.
It's a giant Ponzi scheme.
Oh, it's a Ponzi scheme. But don't be twisted by it. But understand that you're as much as you want to be fear-based, it's like, we've been living through a recession for years, yet because no one mentioned the word recession, everyone's going, oh, gas is $8. Oh, you know what? A carton of eggs is $22. Oh, guess what? My rent is now triple. My insurance is 5 times. All the rest of it. People just adapted. This is part of it's almost like a necessity. This distortion that took place in the last couple of years was necessary for people to realize that being in that panic state or fear base is only going to show you more of the same. So if you're told and you believe that, oh, it's a little bit enhanced, it's not that much of a big deal. It's just that a dollar that you owned back in the 80s is about 20 cents today. But that's okay. That's all right. I mean, if you understand that, then you do more things to create that energy that's necessary for you to be whole, and it may come in different forms. But if you just keep measuring it by the programming that this global sort of puppeteering, which seems to be more and more evident, I think it was just the interplay, the crossroads of 2019, 2020 made it very clear that there's some agenda that's underlining on a global level that is very clear. Not the stuff that many people are beating the drum with ancient practices from anything is indigenous as what you share or what I share, but more contemporary stuff like masonry and gobbledygook like that. Oh, did I say that? I'm sorry. But a more set way of manipulation where everyone's manipulating. They're doing it all the time. How is it serving you? If I say, hi, how are you? You're compelled to submit to my request. Is that a form of manipulation? Absolutely. Because now you're becoming a basically a slave to the dialogue. And now you don't have your own power. You're surrendering it to the conversation. And it's happening everywhere. And people are like, that's ridiculous. But you're just asking someone and saying, you're just inquiring how they are. Well, it sets a tone and a resonance. And if you know how to enter that, you can then continue to guide that person's unconscious, because you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And so people need to realize that I always have them have a deeper understanding of something as infantile as what I refer to as the conscious and unconscious process. You should understand how mechanisms like hypnosis work, because that can commandeer your attention also. We're not talking about heightened states of unity that you and I have been talking about through this whole conversation, but something as simplistic as that is a manipulation, because it takes your attention. And how fast you can get your attention to something is how quick you can be manipulated. Now, is this fear-based stuff? No, I'm just educating you on how the metaphysics, we refer to this as the metaphysics of Tao. Once you start with the pulse animates the consciousness animates the spirit animates the energy animates the body. What I'm speaking about is in the body level stuff. This is not anything more than that. And so we're just getting off to the races and having a fundamental understanding of how this interplay of this energy is working to your favor, or it's working against you in some form. It depends on what you desire. What exactly are you looking for? Yet the consensus is only going to continue to, as it rises consciousness, which is what people continue to refer to. Oh, well, we're becoming more and more people are waking up. I would agree there is a level of awareness, and it's coming from that resonance, because more and more people are cultivating that state, and that, it doesn't mean that it's going to end in death and destruction. That is also a manipulation. The more you watch death and destruction, like news, media, or social media, or media period, which you've sworn off, and from what your own admission, I don't think you have watched any of that kind of stuff for years, if at all, in your lifetime. This kind of stuff can manipulate you.
I do have social media. Facebook, Blue Sky. I just don't have time for TV and media and film. So you said more and more people are waking up, and I think I'm really interested that you find that, because I'm finding more and more people are endeavoring, but they're at least trying to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a gap. I'm really interested in how we help people cross that gap scale.
Right. I mean, you immediately want to get down to a little experiment of your own. You take the effects of neuroplasticity, something that doesn't come into the form of shamanic practices or Taoist practices or alchemy or anything highly evolved puppetry or mastery, because it really is. You're mastering this state. That's what the material, that's what alchemy in turn is a complete mastery of yourself, which is a constant. And so you look at something as simple as neuroplasticity, and anyone listening to this conversation, I've mentioned it before, and I get a lot of people to do this, go out to your local market, your coffee shop, your restaurant, whatever, sit down and observe the environment. Now take a moment, find a point of attention, another person across the room, and then without having a real great understanding of energy, start to mimic their behavior. So they're crossing their arm. Okay, cross your arm. Now what happens is a synchrony that takes place with the biofields, which we're all
you start getting mirror neurons.
And you start to mirror their behavior, and then you can start mimicking their respiration. Once you mimic their respiration, all bets are off, it's over. You will literally puppeteer that person across the room without their knowledge. And your intention, whatever it might be, is it's an exercise in understanding how quickly we merge with this common energy that is the amplified field around you. And that just continually bleeds out and becomes more and more expansive. So when you have someone who has a mouthpiece that commandeers someone's attention on large scales, here we have high levels of manipulation, whether it's a spiritual leader, whether it's a political head. You watch them, and you watch failed manipulators very often. When you just watch newsfeed, they're there all the time. What's a classic one in human history? I had a dream. Okay, MK. Is it MK Ultra or Martin Luther King, MLK? The truth is there's a pacing and leading that takes place. It's all energy. So you understand that with that pace, it draws in and inverts the energy into the initiate, into the recipient, and then you start to build on it. And so audiences will show that. So the simplicity of mirror neurons, as I was getting to, you become part of the collective very quickly without you going, oh, but I don't think that way. Hang on a second. I just heard someone ramble some nonsense. Next minute, I'm in a mob of 100 people lynching someone in a tree. How did this happen? What happened? What was going on? I just had an opinion, and it was met with the environment. And then I went offline, and I became completely deluded. And I just merged with the energy, and I just followed this mob mentality.
But someone who was aware could merge with that energy and take the entire mob somewhere else.
Oh, absolutely. That's where
you've got to do that cleanly. It's got to not come from ego and projection and a desire for acquiring anything for yourself. It's got to be done because it's integral.
Well, that would be a manipulation when you think
exactly.
That. Yes. So there really isn't the moral compass aspect because the universe doesn't have it. But what happens is if you continue to lead with a manipulation that's egoic or personalities like driven, you will continually get a diminished return because that's what the energy does. It's impermanent, it's diminished, it's decayed. It will always collapse back in on itself. And your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are all just emissions of that very impermanent state. So when you merge with the idea that, oh, I want to be of highest moral compass, and I want to do the right thing for humanity, when you resonate there, your default is such. You become in servitude and selflessness. There's nothing required from the construct of manipulation of the person. So it generally, what we refer to this as, when you act in virtue, you have none, which is the very opposite of how someone gets completely distorted. So when you enter into it going, I'm going to do the highest thing for humanity, you just need to stop. Whoa. Because it's a method of cultivation, because we must remember, we always must return to this is energy potential. That even though you may see it as an emotion, a thought, a feeling, it's energy. And when you attempt to manipulate it as a perception of insight, which doesn't come from the intellect, for you to access the power of the intellect and the intuitive, they must merge together. When there's two extremes, there's, yin is the inversion of all colors. It's the absorption of all colors. Yang is the emission of all colors. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, once again, is that center point, that vesica point is where you get the substance, we get the flow, we get the permanence of the immortality that is who you really are, which is everything. So you're not attempting to distort it with this grandiose idea of what true high-stated ideas of ascended transcendence. It's more delusion. You will not have to fight it. It is a selfless act, which we call selfishness to the selflessness requires the sacrifice. And the sacrifice is everything that you perceive as reality, whether it comes from a benevolent or malevolent sort of state. You need to realize that it's all the same. Whether it's yin and yang, it's a succubus and incubus, it's good or bad. This is all just distortion. It's still energy. And so when you act as the true state and essence of that pulse, which is the now moment, all of that falls into place. You access the sentience and the empathy, which is the superpower of being. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't matter. You don't have to attempt. This oscillating admission is your action and inaction without any corrupted manipulation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm curious about the concept that I can't remember the exact words, but it was lacking a moral compass, because for me, the web of life, whatever we choose to call it, you have different words, has a very strong moral compass. It's got that empathy, and empathy, I would say it feels to me like it's raw, wild compassion. I think empathy is a slightly different thing, but I probably spend too much time in therapeutic circles. And that feels to me that once we have let go of the need to hold on to things, basically, once we've let go into that and allow ourselves to become agents of that, then the world balances differently. But that there's still a very strong sense of a moral compass there.
Well, you see, the moral compass indicates that you have a perception that is identified as such. These are all reiterated, emanated states of the humanist, which when you realize you're all things, that doesn't require any insight from a condition that may be related to a human expression. To obtain that now moment does not have definition. A tree doesn't refer to itself as a high moral compass. It's a tree. It expresses itself as such. It's not introspective or analytical, which is where the human being can be corrupted, because there's options. It's what people love to refer to. I have my own will. It's will. My will be willed, or from something as ancient in a biblical text as I am the I am. And that to me is a very corrupted state, because you are inferring to yourself, as you've referred to, an agent, where if you realize you're all things, then there's no discrepancy between you being me being the tree. I am everything, but that means nothing at the same time. So you're not referring to yourself. This is what we call first person, third person, no person. Observing the observer. And that, I've never witnessed a miracle, and I've seen plenty of them. I've witnessed many of everything from flesh gangrous turning back to pink in color in 40 minutes, bones fused, gaseous sealing before my very eyes, tumors disintegrating. I've seen it all. And this is 30 years of me accepting this current present moment. And I refer to the simplicity of, I'm childlike in my nature, accept everything at face value. If you observe a child, and having 6 of them, I watch them every day, they wake up and they're enamored, they're mesmerized by the day. And all they want to do is play. And so I'm never following an instructed, controlled regimen. So they wake up, they play, and most of them will play all day long, and they'll go, Dad, I'm hungry. I'll be like, okay, cool. That means your body is now meeting a level of sustenance, not me programming you to eat because you have woken up at 6 a.m. You must eat your breakfast to be a good boy or a good girl. You must eat right. The body doesn't mention that. The body is not working in that way. You have all the chemistry and all the alchemical process in this wonderment and the mystical excitement of what's next. Oh, Dad. And I get this from my kids all the time. As they progress, as they get older, they're like, look. And look at this. Look. Look. Oh, and guess, watch this. What's this? And I'm like, wow.
Oh, you can whistle.
You are, as you meet that moment of self-realization, that power, because they're feeling into their body, which so many people do not. They get detached. And this is where they don't truly allow themselves to meet the stress and the conditioning and the expansion. So when they don't own this meat suit as an avatar, as an anchor, then they can't truly experience that now moment, which is who we all are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. And I think your kids sound really lucky in that you are providing a safe space for them. You are a good enough caretaker. And and not everybody gets that. And I was reading case studies the other day of a couple of girls who are now adults whose mother was busy working, and her new boyfriend said, I'll take care of the kids. And he waited till she was out the door and trafficked them for sex to adult men, and they were 7 and 8. And it's really hard, I think, in our culture. I think this is the distinction, one of the many distinctions between a culture that is predicated on separation, scarcity, and powerlessness, and a culture that is predicated on agency and sufficiency and connection to ourselves, each other, and the web of life. And so helping people to heal enough that the healing then becomes a process of connection seems to me really crucial, and that I am hoping we have reached peak wounding, and that we can start, because everyone who's genuinely healed is not passing it down the generations. And a lot of people, we've had 10,000 generations, 10,000 years anyway, of separation. And it can take quite a long time. And to have to fit that all together in a decade is a big ask for a lot of people. So finding ways to do that such that people can open the doors to genuine connection feels to me really important at the moment.
Oh yeah. I mean, I most of the people that come to me at the wet ass hour are ones where their loved ones are in a coma on their deathbed, asking for any type of reprieve. And I've had this conversation with many. It's like the interrupt of that wholeness, and all I bring is a resonance, can absolutely fundamentally change the trajectory of that moment. And that happens all the time because all we're doing is helping people remember who they are. And so quite often it's interact with the loved one, and they wake up the next day, their vitals are regulated, and we're off to the races, and they live another 20, 30 years. And you're like, how is that possible? The most profound evidence that I've ever seen witnessing miracles or healings are literally a breath in and a breath out. That's how much attention I will put to just creating the space, as you said, the safe space, the space of giving someone the ability to take pause and then remember who they are. And all it is that moment. And then you witness miracles. I've seen it over and over and over and over again. And that's my Oliver Twist moment. May I have another, sir? That's all I'm looking for. Is I love to witness people returning to their wholeness and witnessing that, and because it's something that it sparks divinity within me. I'm given more of the same. That's what the universe continually shares with me. And for me, I refer to my teaching as Big Trouble in Little China meets Last Airbender, and they had a baby. Now, you may not even know who they are because you don't watch movies.
No idea what you just said.
Yes. If you look at Google for 1 second and look up those two movies, you'll be like, oh my goodness, that's goofy. Yes, it's whimsical. And that's how I entered into my own self-realization as a latchkey kid at the age of 4, realizing I could see through my hand into the wall, look inside people's bodies. And I was never met with my mother going, that's nonsense. Don't think like that. No, she's always like, son, if you put your mind to it, anything is possible. And so that just urged me into constant events of interpreting and reinvesting in this energy that just became bigger and bigger and bigger, and showing more and more evidence of it. And this is what everyone has the opportunity to do. There are no exceptions to the rule. It's about finding the wisdom teaching and meeting that moment where the stress is not inverting you back to a state that is not primordial. It's primal, but it becomes more a fight or flight moment for most people, and they just make it about the emotions instead of realizing that's another emission of energy, that if you realize it's not happening to you, it's happening through you. Oh my goodness, magical things take place. So, I honestly can see more and more. I mean, this podcast, I've had it for 2 years. I've done over 400 podcasts. And let me tell you, more and more evidence. Every conversation I have with you or another incredible wisdom teacher is a reminder to anyone that listens to this conversation that for me, it's an experience. They're experiencing. It's visceral, it's kinesthetic, it's somatic. You are experiencing this as a tuning fork. What we're saying is aligning with your true nature, which is now. That's it. That's all you have.
And do you get feedback from listeners saying that that they are sensing the tuning fork?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, all my students, they love watching this stuff because this is an exercise in their own cultivation, because they can experience all of it. So when we speak, holy moly, they can see the auric field of you and I and see the energies moving through them. This is just basic clairvoyance 101 that I teach people as a basement level beginning understanding of their true nature and their little superpowers that most people think are unobtainable, and they only live in this little hobbit hole in cinematic history. No, when you truly understand how sensory perception is developed, the 5 senses are just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And that, if you can say a word in your mind, you can hear it in your mind, and you can see it in your mind, there's 3 more senses right there.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yes. I have 8 more. I have 8 senses now. Well, yes, of course.
And
the parameters, right? The parameters are limited by you. but you have to have evidence to validate it. This is where I would definitely welcome a conversation of contemplation, and I'll show you more evidence that you must be able to master this substance, so it's not a fleeting moment where, oh, I got a really good insight today, and then it was completely diluted tomorrow. And then, because people don't start to condition and regulate what this energetic flow is, and then they continue with this distortion. They have this incredible hit. I can do this thing. It's a ritual. It's something I was trained in. And then all of a sudden I can see this energy. I talk to a spirit, and then I'm flatlined for another 3 weeks and nothing happened. I'm waiting for the big hit. I got the message coming through. It happens to me once every couple of years, which I find a lot of channelers are like that, instead of realizing that information, that stream is available every microsecond.
Yes.
And some people are like, oh man, I haven't had a massive hit like that in years. I'm like, okay, well, let me give you an exercise that I've used that might help you, and just try it on for size, see what happens. And everyone always goes, holy shit. It works because it's energy. That's all it is. And the more you become familiar with it, because you are, as I refer to, the master keeper creator of your reality, then you can then mold that anyway, just like Play-Doh. You can mold it. But don't be twisted, because I've come across many incredible mastered energetic gurus that are Kundalini masters and Qigong masters and Taoist masters. Just because you can master energy does not make you enlightened. Quite frankly, I've met 3 individuals that can levitate, very, very clearly levitate, and they understand. I understand and teach levitation to people. It's not something that excites me. 2 of them were Indonesian masters, and then one was one of my students. And so most people are like, well, Jiffu, how come you don't levitate? Because it doesn't excite me. I couldn't give a shit about it. But when you meet the resonance, I'll give you the practices that will give you what's necessary to invert that energy and transfer it to zero, where you
but
are.
You have to do it in a way that's not going to bolster your ego, or it's a disaster. So presumably it's not happening until they're at that level.
Journey. Well, no. All of these things are on the journey of self-realization. It's problematic when someone gets obsessed with one thing. I'm a healer. I'm a guru. I'm an energy light worker, channeler.
Anything.
This is problematic for me. If I see you hang around one bus stop, then I go, whoa, okay, you've obtained that. You've passed go. You get your $200. If anyone's played Monopoly.
I have played Monopoly, yes.
So that's one iteration of you. Now, let's expand on that. Don't sit at the same bus stop playing with the same Play-Doh, because eventually that Play-Doh will turn into dog shit. So you have to remember that it's an expansive moment. And that's where people become, stuck in, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I'm a light worker, I'm a healer, I'm a this, I'm a that. Look, that's fantastic until it's not, because you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. What most people end up with is they feed that identity and it has a diminished return. So you go, oh, I was so good at this and now I've lost my superpower, because you're not elevating and regulating everything else that comes with it, so that it can be you can just maintain that permanence, which is the pulse. Instead, you feed into the energy, the wave that is diminished return. And so that ego stuff, the two Kundalini masters that can levitate, they were extremely evolved energetically, but they were both assholes. It doesn't make you awakened. It doesn't make you. People need to understand this. This is where they sit in one thing, and it's like, it would make me pause a little bit when you share the path of a shamanic cultivational practice, because that commitment would then lead to a completion. Yet 12 to 20 years, where do you end and begin at a new point of emanation?
12 to 20 years was then you go back to your village and you take your place as an elder, because at some point your village needs an elder. And you've been training to do that. I don't think it's not an end point. Nobody is suggesting at any point that this is a container or a ladder or any of those things. It's simply the minimum to actually begin to really engage deeply. Back in Roman times, pre-Roman times, was considered to be that.
Right.
I assume also because we're talking with the lore keepers, it probably took quite a long time to learn off by heart a body of lore. But
right. Well, it's a mastery. Yeah. Again, you are mastering a method that then you can share with others. And this is what Tao is about. Tao is alchemy. Ni Dan is internal alchemy. And you evoke Ni Gong, which is your internal power. And that is something that's been handed down from generation to generation. Only when I pull off all the guardrails, I'm just going to give you the secret sauce. And most people are like, I spent 20 years, 30 years looking for this stuff, and you handed it to me in 5 minutes. Because that's how it is. That's the truth.
You've got to be able to absorb it. I think it could take you a while to get to the point where that lands and doesn't simply either blow your fuses or turn you into some kind of a monster.
Well, the reason that I don't have a cautionary tale or an apprehension, because I experienced that myself. So that would be, it would be delusional for me to then withhold what is the true nature of now, which is everybody, by going, oh, well, I need to be cautionary, because if you can't meet the resonance, then that's why I always say, look, you want to levitate, just show me your own cultivational practice that you're at a point where you can hold that resonance. That's really what it is. So I can give you the formula and the method, because it is a method that, guess what? You could sit here and play with the baby shit for years, but you got the formula. And like you said, I think it returns back to what you're saying. It's a level of development, awareness, and mastery, which is what I refer to it. We would refer to it just as a timeline from conception to birth, from a baby to an adult. There's a level of progression of development. But again, time and space doesn't determine wisdom.
Exactly.
You can have someone that's 85 years old and they're a complete...
And they're still a toddler.
They're an imbecile. There's nothing wrong with being a toddler.
No, there's nothing wrong with being a toddler. When you're 5,
it's like
it's not great.
If you reverse everything as one, you can be childlike. That's where you get these gurus that are like, they're goofy. They're like literally good. Everything is amazing, because that's how you truly embody that now moment, is realizing that you are childlike in your nature, yet you can absorb everything and give guidance. And then, of course, that wisdom will help others find their own path. But no, so for me, that happened instantaneously. Yeah, it was a progression. When I was 17, 18, I meditated for the first time. And I stopped sound for 20 minutes. And I was like, that's the superpower I've been looking for. I was handed to me the superpower. I've been, drawing superheroes and training in this stuff for years, with my own experiences, being able to do things that were superhuman. And then I experienced it as an adult. And I was like, that's it. And then it fell into me channeling my teacher the following day. And then the following day, I experienced what we call a distant healing, which is something that is foreign to many, where you're talking about, we had to work remotely. That's just part of indigenous practices. I mean, when people were talking about remotely in 2020, most of the people that I interact with, I've been operating in the same place for 20 years.
We've been doing distant healing for years.
I've never had to see them physically, because it's the same thing. It's an attunement. And so all this progression. So it would be a disservice for me to go, well, I'm the only one that can experience this instantaneous remembrance. So I don't have a guardrail. I will show you basics. As you develop that, then you continually get the keys to the city. And it's just about continually stress, adaptation, and expansion. I'm not concerned about someone becoming some evil sorcerer that casts black magic, because that's a diminished return in of itself. that's a whole nother episode. But this
It
is a
really is.
distorted version of reality, and people tend to create relationships that are very distorted because they believe that this is unlimited, but it's actually a diminished return because you are allowing perception within the energy potential of this material state to dictate what you are doing. Instead of it being a complete wholeness, you are being distorted with the idea that you want to make people suffer or manipulate in what someone would perceive as a negative fashion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does. Yes. Yes, it really does. Yes. Yes. And so something arose in the middle of that. Something about communities of place, purpose, and passion, and so I still work quite a lot on the model of trauma culture and initiation culture. I find them useful, and that our culture, with the heritage that we have, what would happen if we were able to create communities? And they don't have to be local communities. In a couple hundred years ago, your community was walking distance because that's what you had. But now we can have global communities and communities of place as we choose. I still think Dunbar's number probably applies. 150 people is probably about the number there with whom you can hold a heart connection and a sense of relevance. But I suspect there are Venn diagrams of those 150. You could probably have, I don't know, I used to climb rocks. I could probably have 150 rock climbing friends and 150 Tai Chi friends, and 150 regenerative farming friends, 150 writing friends. And I could probably manage all that. And in the middle, there'll be an interset of the ones who do all of them. And what happens if each community were to have an elder who was capable of sitting in balance and responding to the web of life and of creating the energetic space of that and creating the modeling of what it looks like? And I wonder whether that's a thing that you are perceiving as happening, given the nature of the global village now. That if, as you say, there are lots more people stepping into awareness, then they have the potential to be integral to communities all over the world. And every community only needs one to be that model.
Where did you get the 150? Where is that reference to?
Dunbar. I can't remember his first name. It's Dunbar's number. He's an anthropologist, and he says, I think actually it was 12 times 12. I think it was 144, but everybody runs it up to 150, is the number of other people with whom we can make a genuine heart connection and feel a sense of community. Once it gets bigger than 150, communities begin to split. You get a kind of amoebic split, and the community becomes two communities, and they each continue to grow. So Dunbar's number is pretty solid.
Oh, right.
Let me.
I've never heard of that.
You don't listen to Daniel Schmachtenberger. I see you and I live in completely different worlds. Here, I'll find it. I'll put it in the chat.
Personally, I've experienced up to 1,000 people in one spot for group healing, and everyone walks out.
Yeah, I think that's a slightly different thing.
Well, not really, because you're creating a community that happens to be meeting the same thing, which is I want to feel whole.
But how long is it a sustained interacting community where every member of the community continues to interact with each other?
Where everyone interacts with each other, the second your attention is on it, you are connected.
I know that, but we're talking about communities that will last across space and through time. Will it still be there as 1,000 people in 10 years?
Well, the easiest thing is to measure Taoism. There's a 6,000 BC pictograph in Oracle Bone reading that gives evidence in the Taoist canons that this has existed on the face of humanity.
Yes, but it's not existed in the same village. in the same people. There are
Well,
not
no,
6,000-year-old Taoists, as far as I'm aware,
but
in a
that's
community of 1,000
that's a
people.
fundamental of Chinese culture. You can speak to any Chinese person, and that's part of their teaching. This is the difference between Western and Eastern philosophy, metaphysics, is that that's a cultural thing that spans from their own admission. 1.4 billion people have a very similar outlook. They believe in the same thing. But,
Okay.
for me, that's corrupted by superstition because that is very much fear manipulated. It's the
And
same
it's
thing.
still trauma culture. It's not an
Um,
initiation culture yet.
well, it's all determined by what you believe.
Yes, but the core beliefs of trauma culture is separation, scarcity, and powerlessness, and that, as far as I can tell, is driving pretty much all of the world, except for vanishingly few indigenous tribes who are still fully connected to the web of life. I don't see in any of the Eastern cultures any more than in the West that there is an understanding of sufficiency, agency, and connection in a way that allows it to be lived.
That's the very basis of their whole persona. We have a God for everything: the toilet, the wall,
Yeah,
the prosperity.
that's a separate thing, though.
But
Yes.
how is it separate when you believe your belief system is forged in the basic core understanding of what is?
Because there are still hierarchies of people. And in initiation cultures, there are not. If you still have an emperor, the potential for an emperor, the concept that an emperor is a thing, you by definition have a trauma culture. It doesn't matter how many gods you have. We have a whole bunch of gods within our trauma culture, all of which are emanations of the trauma culture, all of which are telling us that hierarchies exist and that we have ownership over the land.
That's the dialogue to the monologue that I referred to earlier. It's all an emanation of the same thing, which is
yes.
So that in of itself is like your belief is determinative of whether you have a community or culture, and death and destruction is actually a diminished realization, especially today. I mean, you would have to. The only way you would come to that conclusion is if you watch media, which you claim you don't watch media. So
no, I've got social media. I just don't watch television.
Right. So the media is a manipulation. All of it is a manipulation. None of it is real, just like your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are all impermanent.
We are agreeing on these. I am going to have to go very soon.
Yeah. So if you look at it in that sense, all of it is just a melding pot of possibility. And more people like yourself or myself are sharing this same awakening awareness. What is possible? Anything is possible. That will tune you to and return you to your eternal immortal self. And so
let me ask you a question, because I am going to have to go quite quickly, but this has just got really interesting. Suppose you and I have different framings of the world. However, I think we're heading broadly in the same direction.
Absolutely.
What does a 21st century, fully technologized, I hate that word, but it'll do, a fully interconnected global world look like and feel like if we move towards what I would call an initiation culture, which is a culture of sufficiency, agency, and connection between all parts of ourselves and each other, ourselves and the web of life. For you, what does it look like in actual practical terms? How are the villages of place, purpose, and passion integrated, connected, and functioning? What's the shift to a not extractive? At the moment, we have an economy using economy in its broadest sense of the markets and the ways that we function, which exists as extract, consume, destroy, pollute. And that's not in any way integral to the web of life. It's a separation mindset that creates that. If we are able to step through the separation mindset into a connected mindset where we don't have extract, consume, destroy, pollute, and instead have integration, first of all, is that a goal that you would aim for? And second, how does it look and feel in logistical terms?
Logistical terms, it comes down to
physical
the breath.
terms.
It comes down to the breath.
And how does it look and feel? How does it, if I walk out of my front door and I meet people, or if I get online and I meet people, however we're connecting these villages, they're either communities of place, which are geographic, or they're communities of passion and purpose, and they're internet connected. How am I integrating in that community?
Well,
how does it function?
The melting pot is the same. It all starts and ends with your belief system. And if you're not believing the dogma of religion, which is a definition that most people refer to because they don't want to accept that that is another pathway to holiness. Everything is just perception. Doesn't matter what it is. You can be manipulated. I can walk up to someone and put them in a trance inside of 1 second of my breath without even mentioning trance, nor hypnotized, nor any of the above, because it's resonance. So when you have a determinative amount, that's a restrictive. Well, when you mention 150, you're instantly coming from a very limited based perception.
Let's let that go. If Dunbar's number means nothing to you, let's not argue about it. I'm really interested in let's assume everyone has got to a place where they've let go of all the stuff that constrains.
Yes.
What does it look and feel like?
It looks and feels like what we're merging into right now, which is an absolute oxymoron, because you are believing that there's death and destruction, yet every time it meets that within the global stage, it falls back into itself, whether it's a political ideal or a functional part of the world stage, which is the three corruptors, whether it's a virus, a world war, or famine. All these things are being met. When you look at it, if you want to sit there, it's just like observing the observer. You sit there and you watch it, but just when you want to hit that peak and you think, oh my goodness, life is over, it then turns back to regular programming, because more and more people like yourself and myself are sharing this information. And through the interweb, people are waking up to this, and that resonance is starting to permeate and bleed out through a global stage where, just as a mirror neuron, that's what's taking place. So you can be a mob mentality, which is a very limited mentality. It's minute, and it's the only thing that gets any sort of play on a global stage within social media, where you see riots in LA, or my goodness, there's world war, and they still diminish it and return back to the same baseline, because more and more of this teaching is bringing people to a place where they are getting a global community. You don't even have to attempt to manipulate it by going, I need to go into a space where everyone thinks like I am, feels like I am. I know that I have completely surrendered to this ideal that is now a permanent state of my breath being, I am all things. I am universe. I am Tao. I am Buddha. I am one. And I am oscillating that back and forth in a community that may be 100, 200, 500, 8 billion. You're seeing more and more of that. And
how are we feeding ourselves?
Pardon me?
How are we feeding ourselves? I'm really interested in the actual practicalities of once we got to there. How do we keep clean air, clean water, clean soil? Those are our baselines. How are we feeding ourselves?
Well, here's
clean water.
Let's use the example of genocide from Chinese culture. That Mao, in my opinion, personality-wise, remember, I have a personality. I enjoy it. I like driving my side-by-side in the desert, 100 miles an hour, eating chocolate bonbons, and I still subscribe to Netflix. That doesn't require me witnessing this relationship that I have with my true self. Yet my personality would say, Mao, being a piece of shit that murdered over 60 million people in the history of China, was way more it was way more of a pause on humanity and a refresher. But what I'm getting at is there is evidence through human history of these events where human beings consume themselves, and they death and destruction, as you referred to it. But what's the common theme is the second they stop believing in that rhetoric is when they fall back and return to whole, and their hierarchy diminishes, and the fallen authoritarian goes back and bleeds back into the common folk and into a consensus where the people will always rise above it, including what's happening right now in China. You're going to see that that cannot sustain itself because that monopoly of a few is not enough of the consensus where you're talking about this universal state of awareness where everyone can just be attuned to sustaining love, acceptance, and forming some sort of integrated system where everyone is fed, everyone is taken care of, everyone is safe, everyone is whole. That is happening. Whether you look at it from a micro, which is you're talking about 150 people, or a global stage, it constantly returns back to that homeostasis, whether your attention is on it or not, and you see it. Yet you're saying, how do we feed ourselves? Well, everyone outside of certain third world countries, which is probably 40 or 50% of this world, still is given some form of resources through events like America giving and garnishing their support through some type of Ponzi scheme that might be considered a nonprofit. But there is evidence that people are being given, the resources that they need, and then there are some that are not. But you don't see that groundswelling of what we would consider positivity. You see more diminished returns that are
no, not at all. I'm just really interested, partly because I have to write the books about it. I'm really interested in what happens. I'm really interested in the through line from where we are, however we define that. And I genuinely have to go very soon. I've been putting people off, and I can't put them off much longer. 8 billion people in a global village, interconnected, and yet an integral part of the web of life, so that we're not in industrial farming, and we're not destroying the water systems, and we're not doing a lot of the stuff that's happening now. What does it look and feel like? And I was just really curious as to whether, with the work that you're doing, you have a sense of the actual practicalities of if we get ourselves to a connected, fully heart connected with the web of life, humanity, which seems to me that would be a pretty major evolutionary step. What does a 21st century initiation culture look and feel like? And I don't get many people that I can ask that question who might have any sense of an answer, to be honest.
Well, the community finds itself, because again, we come back to the energy potential, all the narratives and identifications, the stories, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, I hear all that. But let's assume that everyone on the world is there. Whoever's alive is there. Right. Make that assumption. Let that be our baseline.
Well, this would be considered within Taoism heaven on earth.
Okay, and how does it function? Do people still need to eat? And if so, what are they eating? I live on a regenerative farm. It's really based to my concept of how we get forward is practical stuff like what are you going to eat? And where does it come from? And how are we... Are people still in cities? Yes, no. How are the cities functioning? Those things, I think, along with the, not just now, spiritual things that we're doing.
Right. Well, I mean, practical application of self, meaning you need to start with the body to recognize that the victimhood is where you find the separation. I've never come across more victims in my life that were not able to realize that through their own power, they create. And I think the biggest problem with something like the United States is that it still gives people the opportunity to create from nothing something that then will bring unity, meaning the free flow of belief systems that integrate into one constant. And from that, you find that. I mean, it's interesting. You have these thoughts that would never be even on my contemplation mind, which is fascinating. I love it because it doesn't. I don't use
compute. I can tell
because it happens. Everything happens instantly, and that unity. For example, where I am right now, I'm surrounded by Mormon churches, Jehovah's Witness, Christian, Catholic, Jewish temples, because for me, this is community. Because you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and you start where you are, for sure.
Right. So, I mean, I find it fascinating that that's the first thing that you think about, which is, it's kind of like when someone goes, I want to manifest $1 million, and then they want to know how that works. When you attune to the resonance and you are the magnet, magnetism is the true nature of your eternal self.
And yet, if I'm going to change the narrative, which feels to me exactly what I need to do, changing the narrative is changing it to something that people can relate to from where they are exactly now.
Right.
And so what does the world look and feel like if we're not predicating it on separation, scarcity, and powerlessness becomes a really key question.
But you're experiencing it right now. You're teaching people to identify things that are, in my opinion, infantile thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And you get caught up in that, but you're showing people how to liberate that from themselves to find that a more expansive state of awareness that then they get ownership, or what's the new spiritual world order? Authenticity. And that authenticity then becomes infectious, really. It's like a virus.
Yeah.
And it starts to grow. And
yes.
so you will find
and at some point there's a critical mass.
Right?
Yes. But that still doesn't. Okay, we're not.
Well, for me,
we're not.
No, I'll end with this. I find it fascinating that they're the questions that are cultivated in your mind as something that you need to solve. I think it's fantastic. It's absolutely.
It's what I'm for. Is changing the narrative. At the moment, it's what I'm here for. So I don't get many people I can talk to it about who are not locked in the existing paradigm.
Right.
So
right.
So yeah.
Well, it's fascinating. It's for me. It's kind of like, for me, it's like the semantics. I'm just looking at the 40,000 foot drop of a macro to a micro, and I guess if you stay in that, then it will be self-consuming, because that type of energy is designed to consume instead of liberate and expand.
I would disagree with that fundamentally, but we have actually run out of time, so this is not a point where we can.
It's absolutely fantastic. I'm so grateful.
Good. Thank you.
Grateful for you. And in closing, maybe you can abbreviate this. What is your definition of spiritual consciousness?
Listening to the cat who's halfway up the wall. What is my definition of spiritual consciousness? Is an open, reciprocal, heart-based connection with the web of life, such that I can ask, what do you want of me, and respond to the answers in real time.
Beautiful. Over 400 podcasts, never got the same answer, as I should not, because we're all a facet of the diamond.
There you go.
Diamond perfection. I think you say tomato, I say tomato, it all goes back to the same place. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your wisdom teaching with my audience and myself.
It's been really interesting. Thank you. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for the invitation to come on to something as really potentially world-changing as this.
And perhaps you could take another invitation later on, and we can continue
the conversation. Yes, definitely.
I would love that.
That would be really grand.
I want to iron out
the wrinkles.
The wrinkles. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to help you find the answers to your questions as the support system that I am, to help you realize your true self. That's what it is.
All right. I'm wide up for that. But for now, I absolutely have to go. So
And in
Thank
that,
you.
I will say thank you. I appreciate you. I want to thank you. I want to thank the audience, the universe, for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble
Yes, thank you,
servant,
people.
Steve Hu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.